I'm Christian Chiller. Welcome to my podcast, an enthusiastic ramble through whatever has taken my interest the past week or so. Expect technology, games, history, travel, geekery, and as always, much, much more. Hello everybody. Welcome to Chinchilla Squeaks, my increasingly regular podcast. I've got a lot of content to cover at the moment. Today is going to be another catch-up interview from KubeCon. I'm still getting through them. And that's going to be with Yann and Vic Gamov, who are from Koyeb and Kon, respectively, talking about service meshes and in particular Kuma. So stay tuned for that. But first, let's just dive into a couple of very developer-focused links, and then we'll get to the interview. First, just following up from a couple of developer announcements from the past few weeks, and I am still working on my own WWDC coverage. I don't know if I'll ever actually get around to it. Maybe next time I will be more prepared, but I would like to experiment with myself. From a blog that I've mentioned a few times before, from the Eclectic Light Company, just an interesting wrap-up for a developer's perspective, and especially for this blog who like to go deep into the things lurking beneath the surface of a lot of the operating system, the Mac operating systems, the Apple operating systems. This is an article called, and there's a nice companion article if you want to see more historical context, where we're heading with macOS 13 Ventura. And this is a list mostly covering, the supported models, which I think is more widely acknowledged, but then actually some of the details around topics that this blog covers a lot: security, notarizing, and things like that. And it's quite interesting. Some of those tools, especially command line tools that lurk beneath the surface that you don't always know exist. And actually this blog and a few other resources have really helped me understand some of those actually quite useful Apple and macOS command line tools that you don't really know about, and they're not sort of standard Linux ones, so not ones you expect to find. So have a look at that. And then equally in companion to that, this is from Jen Simmons on the WebKit blog. WebKit features in Safari 16. I think some of the interesting ones for me were Web Inspector extensions. Safari is doing better and better at trying to make its extension ecosystem, or its extensions framework, support the broader extensions ecosystem in other browsers. I attempted to make a video creating a Safari web extension and got very stuck. I will get back to that. I really want to resolve it, but I think the documentation was actually the biggest issue. But if you're willing to grapple with that, then you can now also build extensions for the Web Inspector. I think the Safari Web Inspector lags behind a lot of other browsers' inspectors, so that could make it more useful. Container queries. I think this is something that has taken a while to come on several browsers, not just Safari. Web push, send remote notifications, even if Safari isn't running. It's a bit spammy maybe, but interesting. Could be useful for, I think this has existed in other browsers, I guess. I don't know. I don't really use other browsers so much, so hard to say. A subgrid, like grid. CSS grid. 5 years ago, subgrid now lets you have grids within grids. Flexbox inspector, another inspector, I guess an extension of some description. Accessibility improvements, animation improvements, overscroll, what happens when they get to the end of a scrolled area, shared workers, and a lot more. But actually, equally in comparison with a lot of other announcements from WWDC, some useful, interesting, and I guess potential for the future announcements there. And finally, an article on RedMonk from James Governor. This was actually from about a month ago, but it only came across my map now. Flutter propels Dart, frameworks, language adoption, and cross-platform development. I've been experimenting with Flutter, another thing I need to get back to. But there you go, time constraints. And this article is specifically talking about how without Flutter and without some of the frameworks that Flutter has encouraged and the developer tooling, Dart would not be particularly popular, and how that is a general trend, but especially a trend with Dart. And similar things happened with Rails and Ruby, Node with JavaScript, Spring with Java, etc., etc. So Dart is actually over 10 years old, but not really massively used until Flutter, which is now also 5 years ago. And Google are rebuilding a lot of their applications in it. And last week, so this would have been early May this year, Flutter 3 was announced. I somehow missed that, but there is an article here on the Flutter blog from Tim Sneath back in May introducing Flutter 3. So you can also go and have a read of that too. And actually, no, I do remember this now. Maybe I did mention it. May was such a long time ago. Adding stable support for desktop targets, which actually interests me quite a lot. That's actually where I have been predominantly working, and that interests me a lot. I've been trying to build like a desktop application for to-dos and things like that, instead of just a web-based one. You could argue whether Flutter is that or isn't that, but that's for maybe another discussion. So, yeah, interesting discussion around how frameworks influence the popularity of languages and how that can be quite important, but also just acknowledging that it's increasingly popular. And then a little something from me before we jump into the interview. I'll, because there's only really one thing, we'll just pop it up this side of the interview. You can now find the edited version of my hands-on with Fig, and I got some good feedback from the team. It's kind of like an enhancement for terminals on macOS only at the moment, and I quite like it. You can watch the video. I've been getting some interesting feedback from some of the developers as well. They're pretty responsive and pretty helpful. So nice community too. So enjoy that. And now here's my interview with Yann Lager from Koyeb and Vic Gamov, developer advocate at Kong, talking about service mesh from KubeCon. Enjoy. Next, I'm speaking with Yann and Vic. Yann is with Koyeb and Vic is with Kong, who I've had a few times on the show. Let's quickly kick off with a little bit of an introduction to yourselves and to the companies.
I'm Victor, and I am a developer advocate here with Kong. And Kong is a cloud and API connectivity company. We do all things around traffic management and cloud native connectivity for apps, microservices, you name it. And I'm
Yann. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Koyeb, and we are basically providing a platform which is completely managed. It's a managed service platform where you can deploy a full stack application in minutes. So you can get from a simple container or a Git repository, you connect it to our platform, and we will take care of all the operational burden, and we will also include advanced networking capability.
We're here mostly to talk about Kuma. So to you, Yann, from an end user perspective, how did you find working with Kuma to build your business?
Yeah, so I mean, we have our play is about really simplifying operations and letting developers deploy complex applications without having to deal with infrastructure. And for that purpose, we basically completely abstract networking functions. And we were looking to provide, to bring something as a standard in terms of connectivity, and to bring these service mesh capabilities to the end users without having them to think about basically how it works. So what we are bringing is something where you deploy a container, and if you want to deploy additional microservices, you just deploy the services, in fact, and you don't think about adding a VPC, which is really low level, or adding something for networking manually. We really provide this completely transparently. And we're operating in a specific context where we operate on top of our servers. So all the orchestration is done by Nomad. And we were looking for something which service mesh technology, which brings multi-tenancy and works any kind of machines. And that's actually why we went with Kuma to provide this service to end users.
Vic, tell me more about how Kong adds to Kuma to create its own service mesh product?
The Kuma is the service mesh that is the CNCF sandbox project, and we also, as a Kon, we contribute to the project, and we also build some of the API or like IP rather on top of this to address some of the like enterprise needs for certain customers. And naturally, Kuma integrates very well with the Kon ingress as a kind of like to provide the traffic into service mesh. However, recently the Kuma released kind of like a native gateway support. So right now it is a active development and conversation around the Kubernetes native gateway API. And both Kon ingress controller and both Kuma implementing this API, but also Kon engineers from Kon are participating in creating this specification. So we actively are working with CNCF and this network special interest group to make sure that all the things around the bringing traffic in and all this traffic shaping, traffic management things also will be addressed in the specification that many vendors will support afterwards.
How long have you been working with Kon?
I've been working with Kon like over a year as an official representative of Kon as a developer advocate.
Because they're a company that have been around for a while, and I've sort of seen over the years that the way they've evolved and changed their offering and what they build and what their focus is. How have you found that experience?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things happened for the last, 7 years. So Kon was open source around 2015. The company was basically building like an API, the marketplace. And there was like a huge pivot. The founders were sold. The part of the business that we're running was like a API marketplace side of things to Rapid API. And open source, the core technology that was driving this, and this is how the Kon gateway open source came to be. And since that time, we just like gained the momentum of it's become like literally one of the most popular API gateway, open source API gateway. I need to check on the stars because the stars on GitHub are constantly changing, but it's like more than like a few tens of thousands stars. So it's quite a popular project.
Something I've always found interesting when you're a developer advocate for a commercial company is when you build your demos and example applications, how do you compete with just developers just doing their own thing and convince them that they should do it a different way?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the answer is I don't. I don't believe in bashing other products and elevate my own product because it's just not fair thing to do. And I believe that the user will decide for themselves. I just want to show what is possible, and they will understand what they can do with the product. So I'm here to capture imagination and showing what is possible to do with the technologies. And if they think that's something that will work for their use cases, they want to reuse this type of stuff. I'm not a huge fan of doing this kind of like a checkbox. Like, they have this one and I need to do this one, and now they have this one, and it's kind of it's more like on the marketing side of things. Even though I don't consider marketing as a profanity, to be fair, I just don't do this type of things. I just want to show what Kon can do within certain things.
Let's switch back to Koyeb. It's not a company that probably as many people are familiar with. So when did you start? How did you start? And how do you compare to some of the similar providers out there?
We've been in business with Koyeb for a few years now. We started in 2020 actually. We've been in the space, in the cloud space for way longer because we started another company in the same space before. We were basically were running a business called Scaleway in Europe. So it's a pretty large cloud service provider out there. It's the second largest one in France and probably the third largest one in Europe. So and we started with Koyeb we started in 2020 around kind of the same promise as earlier, but which was we started Scaleway in 2013. So But at the time, it was about providing virtual machines because it was kind of the easy thing to use. And now we are getting up in the levels and we are providing a completely serverless platform with all this native connectivity, which was not at all the subject at the time. So, that's what we are basically doing.
And let's go back to the Kon question. What else did you try? And what made you settle on that in the end?
Yeah, so we looked obviously around on the market. We were looking for an open source technology, and when we went this way 2 years ago, I think we had mainly. So there are two standards: STIO and Envoy. Which are the two key options. And then the question is, how do you orchestrate it? And most of the technologies were coupled with Kubernetes. And as we don't rely on Kubernetes, it really narrowed down our options. And the other thing is really this multi-tenancy capabilities, because we are running multiple customers on the same bare metal machines. And we want to provide an individual service mesh for each customer. And not do it through one single service mesh, which is separated with ACLs. So each with Kuma, the key advantage is that each customer has his own service mesh.
Kon, let's better say Kuma then. What are you at KubeCon to promote, to talk about, to announce, etc., etc.?
So yesterday we participated in Service Mesh Day. It's kind of like a pre-show that also was a pretty exciting show. There's a lot of interesting talks over there. So I was before I joined the Kon, I spent some time around the Apache Kafka community. So wrote the book around this and kafkainaction.org. Go check it out. It's a good book about Kafka. Shameless plug. That's what I do. I was doing a presentation about how to run Kafka in Service Mesh. What kind of like what can go wrong there as well. I was doing a lot of talks around running Kafka in Kubernetes in the past, so it's a kind of like a topic that close to my heart. And with the KubeCon, we were also participating in a panel around the future of service meshes and a lot of conversation around like a sidecar-less service meshes and things like that. What would be the future for next generation of the service mesh? Yann also did a presentation yesterday. He talked about technical details of implementation of Koyeb platform and how it works and which bits use the service mesh and like why it is important for their business. So I think it was a great example of like having the technology like a service mesh in the wild, and like the companies like Koyeb using this with Rage, and some of the lessons that they learned, and implementing some of the things that were not there before, like specifically like ingress thing that you folks implemented themselves, and now the part of ingress and gateway API would be the part of the product itself. So here I'm just happy to be here, just to be frank. So it's been 2 years in the sitting on the like Zoom calls and like all sorts of like virtual events. This as a podcaster, you also probably spent like tons of time with it, talking to people over the over streams in the YouTube and all these kind of things. I just like to get back to meeting with people. I spoke with some of the friends from the past and met some new people, and we talk about technology and all the things. It was great. And I'm happy to meet some of the the customers of customers, users. Again, there's some people who use Kon, who don't use Kon, who use Kuma, who don't use Kon, and there's kind of like a interesting conversation that happened.
Is Koyeb here mostly to promote the fact that you are here? Is that your thing you're announcing, and what are you working on next?
So we clearly have a kind of a different story. Our story is about abstracting all the infrastructure, and a lot of talks here are about infrastructure, which is the funny part. So we're trying to democratize most of the technologies, and we're trying to bring an experience where you can deploy in minutes and globally. And actually, the subject of the talk yesterday was also about having a service mesh which spawns the world, like multiple continents, and how do you build something like this where you can deploy simultaneously in 25 cloud locations. And that's what we are also, that's actually one also of the key feature I forgot to mention, because we needed a technology which lets us basically deploy in multiple cloud locations and create meshes across those locations where if you have a microservice running in Paris and a microservice running in New York, it's going to work seamlessly. That's really the experience we want to bring, and where you don't think about networking. So we have a different play here. We're not so much into the KubeCon, but probably more into the cloud native con, because we're trying to bring people to really a cloud native mindset. At the end, we're all fighting to provide a better experience to the end users, I think.
Apart from your own products, what has excited you or interested you the most so far?
I don't know. Like I just like to also travel and explore different foods. Like when in Spain, eating like a jamon and that type of stuff. You know. The announcement came out yesterday during the Service Mesh Con that Envoy project is actually working on standardized. Envoy was using as a kind of sidecar proxy for many service meshes, and not only service meshes. There are some of the products that existed before that were performing as an API gateway, and they're using Envoy as a kind of like a heart of this thing. So apparently, some of the conversation that happened before this between I guess two projects that are part of the CNCF. It's Contour from VMware. Previously it was Heptio, I guess, and came to VMware through acquisition. And Emissary from Ambassador Labs. Those both API gateways were built on top of Envoy. And they decided to join forces, merge the project, and they announced that they will be working on a thing called Envoy Gateway. That's going to be implementation of Gateway API. If you're interested, can I do another sort of plug? I actually did the video in the YouTube explaining what does it mean, how does it work, and how you can enable this in a place like Konk and in the Kuma, and you can go this in the Konk Inc. YouTube channel, and that was very exciting. Because we started working on this one as separately, but at Konk we looking forward to support this and contribute to the development of this the gateway thing. We're pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, I think I also have subjects around Spain because it's my first time in Spain. It's my first time at KubeCon, even so I've worked in the industry for 10 years. So I'm impressed by the global event, I would say, and also by meeting people in reality after 2 years of pandemic. But and actually, I remember that I forgot to mention something key, which is we announced the public preview yesterday of Koyeb, so which is a key thing, and I've been running for those 2 days between the talk, meeting people, and seeing so much actually technologists in the same space. It's really nice.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Find out more about me at chrischinchilla.com, where you can find show notes, sign up for my newsletter, and find all of my writing, games, work, and video links. There's also details on how to get in touch with me. And if you want to get even closer to what I do, join my Discord server for behind-the-scenes discussions and helping me produce my shows and work.